We have in the house the one, the only. He came all the way from Arkansas. So we'll talk slower. He rode his mule the entire way. Because they don't have any horses there. All the way from Bear Grease and MeatEater, we have not Steve Ranella, the one and only.
It'd been cool if it was, though.
Second string, Clay Newcomb.
Do you like
Wow.
that? Yeah, we do that
Thank
for
you,
everyone.
Dale.
Yeah, I literally do that every podcast. So it really gets the viewers, the listeners going.
Yeah, well, it got me going, man. I thought Steve Ranella was here.
Yeah. Well, the crowd did too. They were pretty excited.
Yeah,
there
I was
for a
like,
second.
man, is Steve about to walk in here and podcast with us? That'd be awesome.
I've been working on a different one.
One man and his mule.
You know what? I actually did back when I had. Wait, are we
Yeah,
podcasting?
we started. Quiet on the set. A little bit louder, Slice.
Yeah, I
Slice
wasn't-
is the new guy. He's
I
being
wasn't
loud.
sure if we were podcasting. So there was a time when I had my own YouTube channel before I worked for MeatEater. Yeah, and then it just all went down. One time I did a video where
Sorry.
this is going to be helpful.
Okay.
This is going to be helpful for the conversation. I did a video, Dale, where I pretended. Well, in the video, you would think that I rode my mule 44 miles to Morrell Targets in Alma, Arkansas.
Okay.
So my house is like 44 miles from Alma, and I was going down there to get a bear archery target from this company, Morrell Targets. And so the video was me leaving my house, like, trotting on my mule. And basically we trailered the mule and like drove it down to a river, and I crossed the river and trailered the mule and drove it down to a big, pretty overlook. And I, run past the overlook, and then I ride up to Morrell Targets. And it was just like such a joke.
Yeah.
I didn't really ride 44 miles, even the way I was acting and everything.
Yeah.
And people were like, "Holy cow! I can't believe that you
Oh,
rode
yeah.
your mule." I mean, so
What a
riding
man.
the mule wouldn't be that outrageous. But
Okay.
it's a couple hundred miles from my house to here.
How many?
I mean,
How far of a drive? Like how many hours?
6 hours,
Really? That's it? I
Oh,
thought it
dude.
was a long ways.
man. From my house, like if you were a bison and
Okay.
you left my house,
Okay.
or really if you were any sentient living being and left my house, you
Okay.
would recognize
What
that
does
you were
sentient
leaving
mean?
just a beast that has knowledge of what's going on, not like a microbe.
Okay.
And-
So I'm four-legged, and I kind of know.
Let's
What's going
go with
on?
that. Let's go with a bison. But you
All
would
right.
you would leave the eastern deciduous forest. You
What's
would leave
deciduous mean?
the eastern deciduous forest. A deciduous tree is a tree that loses its leaves in the winter. It's like an oak tree, like
All
a
right.
maple tree.
It's not a cedar.
That's right. It's not a coniferous tree.
I'm
You
a
would-
bison.
So
I'm around
if you
trees
were looking
without
at,
leaves.
If you were looking at North America as an ecological biome, you'd have the West, you'd have the Great
Mhm.
Plains,
Yep.
you'd have the Eastern Deciduous Forest, which is essentially a couple hundred miles west of the Mississippi, all the way to the Atlantic coast, and just like heavily forested.
And the Atlantic is the one on the East Coast.
That's right.
Okay.
That's that big ocean.
Gotcha.
And you would
I
from
thought
my
the
house.
Pacific was the bigger one.
I'm not sure which one's bigger, Dale.
I'm pretty sure it's the Pacific.
Okay, gotcha. There's a transition zone like between western Arkansas and even Tulsa, where the
Okay.
eastern deciduous forest transitions into the Great Plains.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
it's
I
like
could
a
yeah.
they call it an ecotone where two ecosystems overlap, and you have
Oh, yeah.
animals from the west that interact with animals from the east. For instance, like at my house, we would have roadrunners and armadillos,
Okay.
but we would also have eastern wild turkey, white-tailed deer, black bear, stuff like that. That would be pretty.
Are roadrunners and armadillos like they don't normally get along or something?
They wouldn't be in the East.
Are they they are enemies?
They are not enemies, but they are not that great at living in the eastern deciduous forest. Like you go into Georgia, and I hope no one from Georgia listens to this.
Okay.
But I don't.
Probably not.
There's no roadrunners in Georgia.
I'm just hoping somebody listens to it.
Yeah.
I really don't care where they're from.
Yeah, they would have listened if you'd had
There's
Steve
no
Rinella.
roadrunners in Georgia.
I don't think so, Dale.
Donnie, will you look that up?
Let's check on that.
We're going to fact check you today.
Okay. I'm a little nervous. I'm like 20% nervous.
I'm pretty sure there's got to be a roadrunner in Georgia.
Okay.
But
It's
regardless,
possible. You
are
see
there
what I'm saying?
armadillos?
What I'm saying is,
I don't see what you're saying.
what I'm saying is that from my house to here, the world changes. And it's only 6 hours, but it's vastly different because I'm
And-
from the Ozarks.
Yes.
I'm from the Ozark Mountains, man.
Okay.
The biggest mountains between the Appalachians and the Rockies, this obscure little isolated pocket of what we call mountains. And it's rough country. We don't have big mountains, but if you brought your performance quarter horse to Arkansas and
I don't know why
rode
you
it
shook your head like that.
with my mule, I hope there's no road
No
runners.
roadrunners are not native to Georgia. Wait a second. Wait, hold on. Let me figure out. Your screen is cracked. There's a comma after no. Oh, so you asked it, and it's saying no. Roadrunners are not native to Georgia. Because at first I read it as a double negative. No roadrunners are not native to Georgia, meaning they are.
That's the way they say it there.
They dropped that, but your screen's cracked on the comma. They are primarily found southwestern United States. The unit dropped down, sorry. Anyways, it sounds like he's kind of right. Bro, you need a new phone and a new phone case. Let's talk after this. So what about bison?
I was just trying to pick something that maybe you could identify with. You know, just that you kind of. But my point, I was talking about the Ozarks because people from the Rocky Mountain West will come to the Ozarks and they'll be like, man, those aren't mountains,
Right.
they're hills, and they're not technically that wrong. But this is what I was gonna say, and this is what relates to mules that you brought up.
Okay.
I'm just feeding off your energy, Dale.
Yeah.
Is that
you saying you started it?
Yeah, you started this. We have as rough a country as about there is, but in
really?
small doses. Yeah.
I've not heard that about
Well, I mean,
Arkansas.
there's, I mean, I'm not going to say it's the roughest country in the world. It is
But
not.
that is what you said.
I said I could take you on a mule ride in the Ozarks that would make you pucker just a little bit.
Is that because I'm on a mule or is that because of the Ozarks?
Well, you'd be riding your performance quarter horse,
Okay.
you know?
All right.
So, no. So the Ozarks are cool is what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
That's where I live.
But dang, 6 hours. I feel like, what'd you call the transition?
It's called, it's an ecotone.
Ecotone.
Transition between the eastern deciduous forest and the Great Plains.
I feel like there's an ecotone happening like within like these 2 miles of stretch of road that I live on.
Really?
I mean, don't you think compared to like where we gathered cows yesterday is a one way, and then we went to West Camp, which is east of here, and it's another way.
Right.
Like and it switches from oak trees to mostly mesquite trees.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're looking at like a micro scale, yeah, you would see those kind of differences in topography, differences in vegetation, probably
I feel like
anywhere.
it's a big change.
But on like a landscape level scale, like a continental scale, you know, this would all be the same ecosystem.
I don't think so.
You know,
I think if you zoom
fact
out,
check that.
I feel like if you zoom out, like we're getting, because if you think of like PK compared to like what's that lake over by Wagner's, Kemp, like this, like just
It's
from
different.
lake to lake. Ooh,
Yeah, I don't
baby.
know this country that well.
Oh,
but
I know
it's-
you don't.
I like it, man.
Yeah. So it's good to have you on. I'm really curious and have a lot of questions on. Like to hear a lot about Steve. So yeah,
Since this is like second string.
what's
like,
he like? Yeah, what kind of food does he like? what kind of hunter he is, some of the cool things you've seen him done. It's just really neat that you know him.
Yeah. Hey, man, we're on the same page. I'd
Yeah.
love to talk about Steve.
Yeah.
He's a dear friend of mine.
Yes. Yeah.
And
We were hoping he was
very
going to come with you.
influential. Very influential in my
Yep.
life.
Okay.
Really, in my career. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. What would he have to say on this?
Steve Vernella, if he was on this podcast, would give a series of seemingly disconnected statements for like multiple minutes, going multiple different directions, talking about cinema, global politics,
I feel like that's what
economics,
you just did with describing your drive here.
muskrat trapping. Then it would go to like weasels in Venezuela, and then it would all tie back into, like something really profound. Then you'd go like, oh, okay, I get it.
So, Clay Newcomb, Bear Grease,
I feel like we
almost
started 3 times.
12 years. Yeah. No. I mean, it's one start. No, but we can start over if you feel like it's been rough. If you don't like
This
this
has
start.
been great, Dale.
You like it, Carson? Carson likes it. He's from Missouri. He's
Hey,
from
really?
over there. And so is Donnie. And so is an intern I just did a phone interview with.
The show me state.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they've yet to show me anything. So I don't know what that means. Anyhow, I want to talk about the Clay Newcomb story.
The Clay Newcomb story.
Yeah. I mean, that's what basically I'm interested in, and that's what I like the podcast to be, is people I'm interested in, but we can start it wherever you want. I know that you had a big start about the same time I did when it comes to bear hunting.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
which is summer of 2013. There's a big change in your life. But
Yeah.
if you feel like there was really anything exciting before that, maybe your life was pretty boring and we could just start there. But
Yeah.
essentially, what it looks like for you as a hunter and how your story kind of developed.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you were
Well,
probably a hunter before then.
I would have never thought that I was going to be in hunting. Like, I would have never set out to be in the hunting industry. Kind of like you. Kind of like what I feel like I've heard you say. It's like, you didn't set off as a kid and be like, man, you might have wanted to be at Rodeo, but I probably didn't realize where you were going to end up.
Yeah, with the
But
YouTube and the podcast. And
No, I just grew up in a really authentic hunting family. My dad was a massive influence in my life, still is. But man,
all
he
there
was
in Missouri.
in
I'm sorry, in Arkansas.
yeah, in Arkansas. That's where I'm from, Ozarks. My dad became a bow hunter in the 1970s, really back right at the time when bow hunting started to just become a national thing that people were doing. And my dad was a banker. We were in a small town in Arkansas, so rural Arkansas, western Arkansas. And I always tell the story because it doesn't make sense. Sometimes people might see me and think I was, like, they might think the story was different. But my dad, he was a banker, and he wore a suit and tie to work every day. He was very rural. Our family moved to Arkansas in the early 1830s, came through Kentucky, and settled in Montgomery County, Arkansas, the community of Bumblebee, Arkansas, in the 1830s. And we've been there ever since. So I'm a seventh generation Arkansan. My kids are 8th generation. And my grandfather was a Baptist pastor, Lewin Newcomb, incredible man.
Lewin
Newcomb,
How do you spell his name?
Lewin.
That's cool.
And he
Dang, I've never heard that.
He was a biology teacher, a pastor, but mainly to me, he was a bird hunter. He was a bird dog trainer, and I grew up with him training. I mean, just around bird dogs, around hunting. Then my dad,
Like quail or like ducks?
quail. He was a classic Southern quail hunter, dog
Mm.
trainer.
Gotcha.
And but his fascination and intrigue with the natural world just like stuck to me like glue. I just remember being with him riding down the road and him talking about a bluff that the Caddo River had cut out of a mountain. And just as a kid, I just remember it. And today, you know, his view of the natural world, I think, impacted me. He wouldn't have known that, I don't think. So I'm going way back to the boring stuff, Dale, but it's foundational stuff. So my dad was a banker, was a bow hunter though, and the dad that I saw, the dad that I knew, came home from the bank, put on his you know jeans and flannel shirt, and wanted to bow hunt, wanted to Jeep, and wanted to. He would come home and he wouldn't talk about dentists and lawyers and insurance agents. He would tell me stories about the people that came in that borrowed $400 to go catfishing for 2 weeks. Dang. He would tell me about the outlaws. He would tell me about Louis Dell and Charlie Edwards in our town, who were notorious turkey outlaws, but were beloved people in the community. That when Louis Dell came into his office and needed to borrow money, Dad would say, all I needed from that man was a handshake. You know,
his name was Louis Dale.
Louis Dell. Yeah, that's Louis Dell Edwards, yeah. Not my dad, not my dad.
Right. No, I get it. But yeah. I'm just saying that's a cool name too.
And this is all kind of building. So as a kid, my dad would come home, and my dad was a good communicator and invested a lot in us. And he would tell us these stories, and I wouldn't have known it, but it was almost like he was an anthropologist in a way. It's like he was like just like evaluating people, but he was always he loved the country people, he loved the hunters, he loved the characters. And essentially today, that's what I do for a living, is I tell stories through what I do. And I'm kind of skipping way ahead, but like talking about Louis Dell and Charlie, I'm way skipping ahead. But one of the best bear grease podcasts I think that we've done is a series that we did called
yesterday.
That was the second best podcast we've ever done. Was a 3-part series called Genuine Outlaws. And it was about these two brothers, Louis Dell and Charlie Edwards, who have passed away. We did the podcast like a year after the last brother passed away, and I interviewed their son, their friends, the game warden that chased them their whole life.
Oh, dang.
Their family. I interviewed the undercover agent that tried to bust them.
Wow. And
put together this podcast that essentially was trying to understand from my perspective, were these good guys or bad guys?
Yeah, I was about to say, is that not the guy that
my dad loved?
With
my dad
loaning money on a handshake.
My dad was on the podcast.
So your dad's experience was like his handshake meant everything.
Well, it was
the game
like,
warden's experience was I need to put him in jail.
The game warden loved the guys. That's why it's so fascinating, and I think that's a good example of what we do. Is I didn't know if we loved them or we hated them.
Sounds
and
like
I kind
of
I explored that tension. So the whole podcast is about them, but it's also kind of about me. You know, it's kind of like, you know, in a way, just like
you found yourself like,
who are these guys, and did we like them or did we hate them?
And who am I?
And who is Clay Newcomb?
And
we talked about outlaws. We did like some evaluation of kind of the American fascination with people that push the limits, that push the law. And that's coming from a guy, Dale, and I can say this with utmost certainty. I'm not an outlaw at all. I mean, my dad taught us to do the absolute best we could to have complete integrity, complete honesty in everything we did, even hunting, which in our world, I grew up around people and I didn't know anybody that didn't break the law on purpose. And I'm not saying I haven't broke the law on purpose. I have broke the law, but I don't do it on purpose.
Gotcha.
Do you understand what I'm saying? There's a difference. Yeah. I mean, people that have a ton of exposure in hunting are ultimately gonna something's gonna happen. But point being, we talked about on that episode, you know, just like kind of like evaluated this, like, why do we love outlaws? That's just one example, but I say that to show the influence of my childhood on what I would do. But I went to college, not at Texas A&M, thankfully, but I went to the University of Arkansas. Go Hogs.
Well, I mean,
and
get in where you fit in. You know what I'm saying? Just like
yep. Had a degree in environmental soil and water science.
Yep.
Graduated from college and never used that degree essentially a day in my life. I got married when I was 22 years old. My wife was 18, Misty.
Man.
Still married to this day, 25 years. Ain't quitting anytime soon. Never. Oh man, the story's jumbled, Dale. It's leading to modern times.
Yeah.
Got married, went to college. My wife went to college too. We both graduated from college. We had 4 children by the time we were done.
Golly.
And my wife has a PhD. She is an incredible woman.
Because it took,
No, she
7
graduated with a
years.
4-year degree and we had 4 kids by the time she was done.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. And
No wonder you've never seen any of these movies that I keep referencing. Like, you ain't got time for nothing.
It's true.
See, school, work, kids.
Yeah.
You got 22-hour days, and yeah.
We had 2.
Lonesome Dove,
I don't share-
Shawshank Redemption. He didn't catch any of my references.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't throw this on the table with very many people. I don't know why I'm throwing it on the table with you.
You feel comfortable with me. It's my
But
eyes.
2 of our kids we had at our house.
Whoa.
And one of them I delivered unassisted.
Dang.
Like, it means there was no midwife there,
Yeah.
just me.
Dang.
I mean, we had some family there, but
Old school.
well, and we had to, Dale. The system
why?
pushed us in the corner, Dale.
Why did you have to?
Well, that's a long story, but like back then it was that's all. I mean, it's not like secret, but we don't have to get into like VBACs.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, don't look it up.
Okay.
But
Still,
I'm just trying to give you a little picture. This was our life and our world.
I mean, you do live in Arkansas.
Not
So
many hospitals.
We should have the baby at the house.
That's about the way it was.
I heard somebody say that the only convenient thing about having your baby at the house is you don't have to pack a bag, and that meaning their suggestion was go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Overall, is that your
suggest it.
experience?
We didn't do it because like trying to be cute. Like there's like people today.
You weren't trying to be a hippie?
No, we truly weren't. I mean,
You would have preferred the uncomfortable hospital bed for the guy to sleep on.
That's a complicated story, but I'm
just
giving you a
saying,
little
like,
picture of the.
If that meant there were 4 nurses and a doctor there to do the hard work.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
So we had kids. We went to college, and when I graduated college, I felt like I could do better being an entrepreneur, and I wanted to be able to raise my young family without a overlord, without a boss, and I wanted to be able to hunt when the white oak leaves turn maroon in October. That's what I wanted to do. And so I started a landscape company. So I landscaped
About what?
for 8 years.
How old are you at this point? Or what
25.
year was
25.
it? Yeah.
Probably about
Okay.
25, started a landscape company.
Cool.
And it was not something I was necessarily passionate about or even necessarily good at. Really didn't have any training in it, but it was just kind of something I could do,
And
work with
also,
my hands.
a little bit seasonal. Probably not going to be as busy
That's right.
in November, December,
That's right.
January.
And did that for 8 years. In 2008, I killed a big deer in Arkansas with a bow in 2008. Had a dream. True story. July 2007, I had a dream that I killed a 24-point buck with a bow and arrow.
Dang.
And in the dream, it was the state record. I woke up from the dream, picked up a piece of paper, drew the deer on the paper, stashed it away.
No.
Wrote on the paper. I wrote on the paper, Misty, don't throw away. Stashed it in the paper.
Was she notorious for throwing away your
Yeah,
midnight
just
doodles?
throwing away stuff.
Like Clay's writing down dreams again, just tossing it.
And this is absolute truth. And then on October 18th, 2007, I killed a 24-point non-typical whitetail with a bow.
How long after the dream?
Like July to October. And it wasn't as conscious. Like when you go back and tell the story now, it just is almost incredible. I would have drawn that picture and actually forgot about it. Like it was that small, but I was just like, huh. And
so
I drew what I saw.
You were thinking about it. How often did you think about it leading up to deer season?
I really didn't.
Okay.
It was so small that it would be like afterwards that I was like, let me go. I forgot. It's like the dream.
Oh, so even whenever you saw the deer and you
I
draw
actually
back,
don't remember all that. Like this story never became something I talked about until I got into outdoor media, and I don't talk about it all the time, but I've told it several times. And the buck and the picture is framed in my office right now.
do people believe you?
I mean,
I'm not saying I don't. I'm just wondering if other people do.
I don't really care if they believe me, because what happened though, that deer, I had no intentions of being in the outdoor industry, but that deer, I wrote 3 articles that got published in 1 regional magazine and 2 national magazines, North American Whitetail and Bow Hunter magazine in 2008. And that deer set me on a path. Like if you could just say, at what point did you turn just a little bit to the left, to the right, go
The fork
get
in
off.
the road.
And it was that deer. And
Dang.
And
Had you had do you have that often? Like dreams that
I've probably had 5 dreams in my life that were really significant.
Meaningful?
Absolutely. I mean, it's like,
but were any of them kind of like foreshadowing like that? Or were they just like meaningful dreams? Like is that
no, I would say that one was unique in the specificity of it. Like that it was a 24-point deer.
And you think obviously like God was kind of just talking to you?
I absolutely do.
Yeah. I heard somebody say once, like a believer, they're like, I don't believe every dream means something, but every now and then. And I kind of feel like that's probably right.
100%.
I try not to really listen to my dreams right now because every now and then I'll have melatonin, and I feel like that really messes with me.
Yeah.
Or coming off of surgery, like if I have a pain pill, I just, golly, it's like you're, I don't know, living in a warp zone. Like there's aliens walking around, and I try not to take anything serious from my dreams.
Yeah.
And during those times.
Well,
but right now it's just melatonin, so nobody has to worry about Dale Brisby. But I'm just saying, it makes me want to just go back to a glass of water before I sleep and listen to my dreams more, because that's fascinating.
Well, here's the way that I think about it is I think about in your life, and I know you're a Christian, you're a believer, as am I. I mean, I feel like God's speaking to us all quite often.
Yes, sir.
But it's like does everything in your life mean something really significant that happens, or are there some things that mean a ton? Think about all the interactions you have, or it's like every day something crazy doesn't happen, but sometimes something does, and this is
Right.
a sign, this is a direction, this is God speaking to me, through a circumstance, through a person. I think dreams are the same. It's like I don't dream a lot, but when I have a dream that's significant, I know it's significant.
Yeah.
And I've had dreams that directed me as a father, that gave me almost like doctrine that I knew that I had to adhere to.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of just directed me as a father. I'm thinking of one in particular, but not it doesn't happen very often. Like I said, probably 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, I definitely feel like as a even maybe a dream, but also just somebody gets put on our hearts and our minds. You know, maybe there's a certain friend we haven't talked to in a few years. I kind of feel like that is sometimes, or at least that's what my dad told me. He was like, man, if you've got this one friend that pops into your head every now, I've got a friend from high school who recently, and I'm just like, man, I need to check on him. And so I kind of had to go, and turns out anyway, he was a little bit behind the eight ball and needed some help. And I don't know, it made me glad that I kind of acted on this feeling. It wasn't a dream, but it was just like, I need to reach out to my boy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I do remember my dad telling me that, like, it's probably not chance, it's not random. And so I try to act on things like that. I could see myself if I had a dream like that, I could see myself writing it down. Going back to the deer though, like how close was it to the picture you drew?
It had some similarities.
Mm-hmm.
Which like when I drew the picture, I was not drawing it from like a photographic image in my head. I just remember the deer had non-typical points, and just kind of like the general shape of the frame. So I'm a whitetail guy. Like I showed you my belt buckle yesterday, which I'm official Boone and Crockett scorer.
Attaboy.
So like antlers mean like every antler that I've seen this week, I've like calculated in my head, you know, like probably what it would score. I just do that instinctually, like you probably do for
buck and bull rides.
Buck and bull, exactly.
Yeah,
for real. And but what's interesting is that in the Boone and Crockett scoring system, a point is only considered a point if it's over an inch long. And so my deer actually only has 21 scorable points, but it has 24. It has 3 points that are under an inch that you could hang a ring on. And if you know the whitetail world, you would know that the good old boy way to tell if a deer is an 8 point, a 10 point, a 12 point is how many points you can hang a ring on it. And so because in the dream, the deer had 24 points.
You're going to go with the good old boy version.
I think Boone and Crockett missed it. And I mean, I'm an official measure. I mean, I'm wearing their belt, their
So
buckle
when
tail.
you measure, do you take a ring or do you measure
Well,
an inch?
if I'm officially measuring for Boone and Crockett, I do it their way. But but the person, I'm like, hey, just between me and you.
Just between me and you.
And probably God, I'd be counting.
And probably God.
I'd be counting these points.
So had those points counted, it would have been a state record?
No. That's the part that like I add that part just to make it real. Like there was no state record involved.
Kind of embellishment.
But in the dream,
Gotcha.
It was like state record, you know.
Gotcha.
Just that, but again, I think that's that to me that just it was like it was just going to be significant.
Yeah, because it kind of
it's absolutely
set you on a trajectory.
Set me on the track.
Yeah, in a direction.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And when I see that deer hanging in my office, like, I mean, I really think about, I don't think about my career like in terms of like accomplishing something. I think of it as a plan from God to provide for my family in a unique way that has allowed me to be the kind of father, the kind of husband that I've been able to be because of the type of work that I do, which, you know, it can be difficult at times because I do travel a lot, but I'm home a lot, man. Just like, probably like you.
Yes, sir.
You know?
Yeah, that I mean, it's such a personal thing for you between you and God, that it's such a neat way to push you in a direction. Like it's such a blessing. Like that's so cool. It's not like it wasn't out of this mishap or a tragedy or something going wrong. You know, It's just you were a hunter, you're doing the landscaping thing, and then God kind of blesses you with this opportunity. Yeah. And that's what even pushed you further down the
And
that's
you know,
super
when
neat.
I was first started landscaping, and I mean had a young family that completely depended on me and my wife, you know, there was the passion for hunting felt incongruent with what I needed to be doing. Like there was this tension.
Just a little bit of like a selfish endeavor.
Yeah. And so I
Not a
was
little bit.
constantly evaluating that because, I mean, I feel like, I mean, not everybody that hunts is supposed to like, is going to end up pursuing it and it being a living for them.
Yeah. How do you monetize it?
But so that was never my goal. But I mean, the way that I think God deals with people is like literally day by day guiding you, and based upon, like, I mean, we got to be careful with our desires.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cause I mean, like you could desire something bad. That's not what you need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You follow me? But I mean, I do this to this day. I wake up every day and I'm like, God, direct me. I mean, I say it and I mean it. Direct me, direct my passion, direct my eyesight, direct my what I'm drawn to, the people I'm drawn to, direct me, you know.
Yes, sir.
And I trust when I wake up, and if I have really, you know, dedicated myself to, first of all, obeying, you know, what I see in the scripture, but then I trust what happens in here. I mean, like, I think we're connected to him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I like to pray, you know, like, Lord, what will I don't want to learn a lesson the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather not. And it seems as though, you know, your parents tell you, for instance, nothing good happens after 10 o'clock or 11 or midnight, you know, and any of those three numbers I think are true. You know, it's, and then you go through your 20s or whatever, you look back at whatever age, you look back at your younger, it's like, dang, there really wasn't much after a certain time of night where it's like, no, this huge blessing came to me at 11:30 p.m. You know, it's just like that my parents were right, you know, and matter of fact, like the hardships in my life came from, and I don't know, I guess there's just like these little lessons in life where I just pray, man, how convenient would it be for me to just do the right thing from the beginning and not learn a lesson the hard way. But essentially, like, what's in line with God's will. And I think I agree with everything you just said. If I can start my day with getting really in line with God's word and wanting to do his will, and then from that point forward, because I guess, you know, the alternative is like, you got to make, let's say you have to make 2 or 3 big decisions and then 10 minor decisions and 40 kind of almost insignificant decisions in a day. So let's add them all together, you know, 53 or whatever decisions that you have to make that day. Do we really need to stop and pray right before every single one, this, you know, a 30-minute prayer? Or is it like, do I get in line with God's word?
Yeah.
And then allow him and trust that he's given me discernment.
You manage life from the core. So if your core is strong, your core is right, then everything that comes out from the core, from little decisions to big decisions, they're kind of all the same, really. I mean, because, you know, what makes a person is not the big decisions that they make. It's often the tiny granular decisions, you know, that add up to be these big, huge mountains. You know, I remember one time in our, I saw a graphic. I actually made the graphic. Pretty sure. Didn't I make the graphic, Josh? Of the gravel. Do you remember
what
that?
What a very interesting twist. I saw a graphic. Actually, I came up with it.
Well, as I said it, I didn't want. Tell me if you remember this, Josh Spillmaker's here. We often think life, the important parts of life are made by these big decisions. And so I had on my graphic. It was beautiful, brilliant.
I read a book. Wait.
I wrote the
book, actually.
Did I write that book? No. Listen, Dale. There were these huge rocks. There were like 3 or 4 big rocks.
Okay.
And it was like big decision, big decision, big decision. It looks like this big mountain. And I said, that's the way we often think about our life, is this series of big decisions.
Yes, sir.
And then I had a pile of gravel, tiny, tiny little pieces of gravel that were little decisions that made a huge mountain. And I'm like, we often think our life is just a series of 4 or 5 big decisions that make this mountain. Actually, the mountain is made of tiny pieces of gravel. Do you understand?
100%.
Did I not make that graphic, Josh?
I do agree with you. And you're so used to not taking credit for things that you forgot you're the one that made it. It's
Well,
probably
I don't
in
know.
your humility.
My wife may disagree with the fact that you think I don't take credit for things.
I can't remember. Did I write that book or did I read it?
Uh,
Sorry, that was a Dale Brisby moment. But I agree with you. I think, you make choices, your choices make you.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, I'm on a little chronology here. Would you like me to continue that?
Please.
I wasn't. Okay, so landscaping
Okay.
killed the deer 2007. His name was Dagger. Got a 9-inch brow tine and a 4-inch brow tine. Kind of do like this. Wrote these articles and was just passionate about hunting. Just loved it, but no thought of making a living in hunting. I just wanted to hunt and truly wanted to be a good hunter. I mean, I just studied it and just loved it. Not hunting as much as just loved wild places, loved woodsmanship, loved people. Just like you love rodeo,
Yes,
I
sir.
love hunting, love the people, love every component of it, And wrote a couple articles, made a couple $100 and was like, dang, that was pretty cool. And over the next 3 years, I started, because I met these 3 editors of these 3 magazines that published basically the same article. I had connections with them, and it was before. It was certainly the internet was alive in 2008, but it was a lot less prominent than it is today in terms of media.
Yes, sir.
I mean, like, I didn't have a Facebook account, I didn't have Instagram,
Yeah, I think Facebook was like 2005.
but I didn't have.
And I think
have
that
Facebook.
Instagram was like 2013 or 14.
Yeah.
So
But I didn't even have Facebook till like 2011 or something, probably. But I had connections with these guys and basically just started querying them for articles about deer hunting, whatever. And over the next 3 years, wrote quite a bit of freelance hunting articles. And then this will be a short blurb. I started how I got into bears is another long story. I'm going to skip over that to a degree, but I started a regional hunting conservation organization that was in existence for about 5 years. It was kind of like a stepping stone. We had a magazine, and it didn't make a dime. It wasn't. I was doing this conservation organization for bears. It's called the Arkansas Black Bear Association, and I did that while I was landscaping. No intention of it becoming something that I would do for a living, but that magazine that I made, which I didn't know how to make a magazine. We literally just. I just was like, I'm going to make a magazine. Got Adobe, learned how to do graphic design.
what was your draw? Why did you want to make that? You saw it as a way to turn obviously you're passionate about hunting. You're good at writing. And then maybe if there's like some sponsors attached to it, it'll create.
But it was I never really thought of it like creating income for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a passion. And I wanted to create a regional hunting magazine for Arkansas. And at the time, a magazine seemed like a good idea, which, today it probably wouldn't be. And did that for a couple of years, and that got me into the bear world because the magazine was called the Arkansas Bear and Buck Journal. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I believe it was June the 7th, 2013. Because of the Arkansas Bear and Buck Journal, I had met the owner of a national hunting magazine called Bear Hunting Magazine, which was an obscure, like little antiquated magazine based out of Becker, Minnesota. I was shocked it was even in print, but I had heard about it. And this guy and his wife had this little magazine, and it'd be kind of like, I don't know if there's any rodeo magazines that are small, but in the mule world, we have a magazine called Mules and More.
Uh-huh.
And
we got a few of those.
Just like literally run by a person, like a single person
Yeah.
that prints this magazine. there were quite a few of those kind of titles, and still are today. Bear Hunting Magazine's still in existence today. It was this obscure little magazine. This guy knew me because I was making a regional magazine. And in June of 2013, out of the blue, this guy emails me. Hardly know him. And basically makes me an unreal offer to take the business, essentially.
Dang.
I mean, and at first I actually thought it was a scam.
Right.
Like I thought this guy's got a lawsuit against him or something, and he's trying to get out from underneath. Not a scam. Internet scams weren't that big a deal back then.
That's true.
I thought the guy maybe was trying to pull one over on me.
Right.
You know,
Something attached to it. And
yeah, maybe something attached to it. And going back to direction from God, I had been building the landscape company for 8 years and had this. I just felt like the trajectory for landscaping to be successful was to have crews and build a big company and do all this stuff. And I just could never do it. I could never find the right people. Every time I would get somebody, they would leave. They something would happen. And actually
that seems like a really hard business to get like good help in.
Oh, it is. It is. It for real is.
Because it would,
anybody that's good enough to run your business is good enough to run their own business.
Yes, I was trying to find a nice way to say that.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely. And I actually felt kind of like a failure in landscaping. And here I was 8 years in about 2012, I kind of just died to this idea of Clay having a big landscape business. And I literally was working by myself, building rock walls. I did a lot of rock work. And man, I remember coming home for 8 years like this, but just literally covered in dirt, just from working, stone work. We have a lot of retaining walls in the Ozarks. And
because of the roll. Were you? At what point were you just like fed up and disgusted with? Was it miserable to you?
No, I loved it. No, it wasn't miserable. It wasn't miserable, but I knew it was like this confusing time for a younger guy that hadn't quite got his life lined out. It's like I knew there was something more. I knew I needed to be doing something else. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was or how it was going to happen. But if there's one principle in my life that I have used and done is that if you're faithful in the little, he'll entrust you with much. Period. Mm-hmm. Anything. That's what I try to teach my kids. Like if I tell you to take out the trash, just do that job really well. And you'll be entrusted with more chores. That's not the best sales pitch.
Right, but I get what
you
you're
see
saying.
What I'm saying. So it's
maybe
like
one day I'll let you drive the car.
I knew that in landscaping I couldn't cop out. I knew I couldn't have a bad attitude. I knew I just had to do the best I could. But in like 2012-ish,
it probably also gave you some good perspective because on a hard day with your Bear magazine, it's like, man, this is tough. And then you think, yeah, but I'm making this much money and this job is tough. And however many years ago, I was making this much less money and I'm covered in dirt all day.
Yeah.
That's what the working in the feedlot has done for me here.
Yeah.
It's like a hard day here beats an all-nighter in the feedlot on the processing crew.
Yeah.
For $8 an hour.
100%.
Maybe, I think it was like $6. My boss was not that bright, especially when he was intoxicated. And I had to like do the math on a piece of paper because I didn't have a cell phone on what his check was to me after I drove myself home and hit with him in the passenger seat. Anyways, but my point is, I think it was like $6 something. But that old job with that boss just gives me perspective on my bad days now. Is that what the landscaping was for you?
Oh yeah, it does. It does that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least I'm not weed eating some old lady's yard.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm moving through the story here. It's gonna take off like a rocket.
Sorry, I keep interrupting.
No. I keep interrupting. I just 2012 landscaping full time.
Yeah.
And I feel like a failure in business because I can't build this
Scale.
business. And here I am just working out there by myself.
Yep.
And I felt like kind of a release from this idea to build some big business. And I just started working hard by myself. And literally all the contracts that I had would be week to week with people. I didn't know anybody, any money, a substantial amount of money. And when I got the email, going back to the email in June of 2013, and this guy is basically like, hey, what are you doing in your life right now? And he said, can you take this business, essentially? And I'm like, I mean, you know, there was a process of talking to my wife and talking to some other people in my life. But I was like, heck yeah, I can do this. And he said, what about your business? And I remember saying to him, I said, man, this business has an eject button on it. I said, literally, if I finish the job I'm working on tomorrow, I can.
That is one thing true about landscaping.
Yeah.
I mean, you got your go-to guy that mows your yard, but if he quits, it's probably not that hard to find somebody else.
Right. And I wasn't mowing yards, but
worst case scenario, somebody mowed their own. I mean, I guess that's what my go-to when I think landscaping.
yeah. No, well, it's inconsequential, but I was building a lot of hardscapes, landscape, like hardscapes,
Gotcha.
like retaining walls, like designing beds and planting trees and grading. Had
So a little
small
bit
backhoe.
A little bit bigger bids and budgets and
Yeah. I
Gotcha.
wasn't doing a whole lot of mowing.
gotcha.
But it made sense of me not being able to build this business all these years when opportunity came in the outdoor industry.
Mhm.
And I went from landscaping to full-time in the outdoor industry in the matter of a month and owning this business, which had big-time deadlines. When you have a magazine, you have, you know, you're contractually obligated to your subscribers to, you know, send them a magazine on this
You
day
bet.
and this time. And so I get the magazine. I know very little about print. My only experience in print is that I had this little regional magazine.
But what a good warm-up.
Exactly. I mean, it was something. It's the only thing that gave me confidence that I could
Yeah.
do it. But it would have been like, you know, riding the kitty bucking bull and then getting on, you know, the big bucking bull.
For sure. Yeah, just one. The next bull is like something on tour.
Yeah. And so I went from doing that to all of a sudden in the full-time outdoor industry, though in a very obscure niche part of the outdoor industry, Bear Hunting Magazine, this print magazine. And the way I got the job, we're just talking, right, Dale? We're just kind of broing out.
That's how I feel.
When Bear Hunting Magazine, the owner, great guy. He did me so many favors. He was trying to hire a social media guy in like 2012.
Yeah, because all the magazines right around then, they were like, uh-oh.
Yeah, we better get on this social media
Yeah.
thing.
Is that what led him to want to like, hey, I see where this is going. Let me put this on a young cat that can maybe.
Exactly. But so Bear Hunting Magazine owner, in like the year or so before I got the magazine, he had contacted me. Well, I told him, I interviewed for an editorial job at Bear Hunting Magazine before I got the business. And I knew that I was unqualified for the job. So when I was talking to the owner, I gave him like double barrel full of what was wrong with his business and how he could fix it. So the chronology here is kind of difficult, but
No,
this
I
was
get it.
before I owned the magazine.
You had a rapport with him prior to him
a
giving
little
it to
bit.
you.
Like
Yeah.
I knew they needed an editor, which I was unqualified to be the editor. But I say, hey, I'd like to be your editor. And I remember where I was when the thought popped in my mind, I could be the editor of that magazine. You know, just like, it was like this huge, like,
And you were going
thing.
to just learn as you go.
And anyway, I called him and I said, listen, buddy, you need new design on the magazine. It looks like it's printed in 1987. You need a better website. You need to be on social media and you need a YouTube channel. I said, that's what you need. If I was the editor, that's what I'd do. And he ends up giving the editorial job to another guy. I don't get the job. But a year and a half later, he calls me and he's like, hey, have I got a deal for you?
Mm-hmm.
Like so it's almost like the interview was much bigger than what I realized.
Dang.
And then the bear hunting magazine years were incredible years for me from 2013 to 2021, just like 3 years ago. And
4, but yeah.
Yeah, 4. And it was just grinding as an entrepreneur in an antiquated model in a way.
How did you? I mean, did you take your own advice, and when you picked up the magazine, you started social media and a YouTube and a website?
Yep. And we started a YouTube channel. We started filming. I just knew that the magazine, which I love print, Bear Hunting Magazine is still in existence. It's like a great magazine. I knew that it needed to be bigger than just a print magazine. And so we started a YouTube channel. We didn't start YouTube, though, till probably 2017. And then we started a podcast in like 2018, I think. But we were doing social media and everything. And ultimately, all that work that I did on that is what MeatEater saw. And then in 2021, 4 years ago, going on 5, MeatEater would call me. And I didn't know Steve. I mean, I'd met Steve before, but didn't know Steve. But right before COVID, I got a call from him. And that transition was just like the landscape to Bear Hunting Magazine transition, which was just this wild, like completely unforeseen, completely untrackable.
Yeah, I mean, who gets that email?
Yeah, exactly. Ranella calling me in 21 was essentially the same thing.
Yeah, who gets
out
that
of the
phone
blue?
call?
Yeah, you want to talk about Steve Ranella? That's what this podcast is about.
There you go.
Remember?
Yeah.
This is how Steve Ranella rolls. You get an email from him. You don't know him. 1 sentence email without hello or goodbye. Hey, what's your cell phone?
Yeah.
Steve Ranella.
Have you?
I don't know the guy.
Have you
What's
gotten
your cell phone?
the recent Facebook Live event emails?
From
I might have gotten one that had your name on it. It'll be an email.
from
say,
MeatEater?
No, I'm just saying scam emails that go around where they'll reach out to people like, hey, I'm the manager for Bradley Martin Podcast, and we'd like to have you on a Facebook Live event, and we're going to pay you $3,000. They all say the same thing. And they say, anyhow, it's a scam, but they appeal to like, the front is they're a podcast, and the people they try to scam are influencers because they're going to essentially take their Facebook.
Oh,
so like if you have 200,000 followers on Facebook, but they know that they can appeal to you because everybody may want to be on that particular podcast. The very first one I got was Bradley Martin, who's a bodybuilder, podcaster, and I had met him one time prior, and I knew he had no idea who I was. And so when I got the scam email, I knew it was a scam, but they take a lot of people's Facebooks that way. It's just out of the promise that like,
dang.
And then people just believe it. Like, oh, Mike Rowe wants me on his podcast and he's going to pay me $3,000.
Let's go.
And then people, sure, I'll give you my Facebook login to do it. Anyways, I didn't know if you had gotten them, but I guarantee you there are scammers out there that use Bear Grease and Clay Newcomb to like
I've heard
hunting
some
influencers.
stuff.
And they'll be like, hey, I am the manager for Clay Newcomb, and I'd like to. They probably use Steve's name more. No offense. I'm the manager for MeatEater at Steve Ranella, but we'd like to pay you $3,000 for a Facebook Live event. I'm surprised you hadn't gotten any of the emails.
Well, I don't really check emails or watch movies.
Whoever
no.
checks your emails, I bet you've gotten some.
Yeah. I don't recall that specific scam, but I can tell you that if it's Steve Ranella scamming you, if you get like a 1 sentence email, it's probably
it may not be
it's
a
probably
scam.
Steve.
It's probably really him.
It's Steve.
But I could just see myself getting maybe that email right now, and I'll just be like, Psh, delete. That's how, you know,
100%.
because there's so many scammers out there now. Is
Yeah.
what would make me think that.
Yeah. So Steve Ranella calls me,
Emails you.
emails me, go to work for MeatEater, which to me was a massive deal, and still is.
Yes,
and,
sir.
and it's been really good for me. But
And what year was this?
this was 2021 is when I went
Okay.
to work for MeatEater. But what it did is for basically a decade, I was, because of Bear Hunting Magazine, all of our media was focused on bear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just like hyper focused on bear. And it ended up being, I'm giving you a version of the story not a ton of people get.
Well,
Because in
thank
the
you.
outdoor industry, I don't know, I feel like people know this. There's something about talking to somebody who's not quite in your space fully.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The black bears were kind of a redheaded stepchild of the hunting industry because of the ways that you hunt bears.
Okay.
Hunt bears with dogs, which at the time nobody was talking about. Nobody was talking about the tradition, the ethics, the deep knowledge base that
People just didn't
houndsmen
want to
have.
go there.
Well, people that don't know didn't understand hound hunting so much that it's like just something we didn't talk about. Like, I remember when I first got Bear Hunting Magazine, there was a guy, a pretty well-known guy at the time in the hunting industry, knew I got the magazine, and he said, "Hey, Clay, whatever you do, don't focus on the houndsman because that is dying off.
Oh, dang.
That's dying. Nobody wants to hear about it." And I'm sitting here looking at this man, 30 years older than me, established in the hunting industry, and I'm this kid who knows a landscaper, hunter, connoisseur of Louisdale and Charlie Edwards out of Mena, Arkansas. And I was just like, I didn't say this to him, but I was like, "You're dead wrong."
Yeah. I mean, that's fascinating.
I said, "You're dead wrong." And we actually leaned into the controversy around bear hunting.
That's good.
Because hounds, but then the other thing that people in the hunting industry were uncomfortable with, and nobody had quite had the guts to talk about it from a real intellectual and just logical way, was baiting bears.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question. I feel
And
like,
man, we leaned into that so hard. And I mean, I can say this because it's true. I was like the first guy that was talking intelligently about hunting bears with hounds, with bait, seeing the overall picture of black bear hunting in America.
how would there be any other way? Or how would you hunt
Well,
a
I mean,
bear
there's
if you're not
multiple-
going to bait them and
Listen,
you're not going to hound them?
black bears are the second most widely distributed big game animal on the continent. There are black bears in Maine. There are black bears in Old Mexico. There are black bears in Alaska. Ursus americanus is in Florida. It spans the continent. The only place there aren't black bears is in the Great Plains. And whatever's happening to black bears in North America has been, whatever is happening ecologically has been massively beneficial to black bears. Black bears are thriving. There are 8 bear species in the world. 8 bear species. There are more American black bears. There are twice as many American black bears as every other bear species on planet Earth combined.
So I guess I'm just saying, like, if you're not going to bait them, if you're not going to hound them, you just kind of got to know their patterns and hope to cross
Does he know
paths.
that I'm getting there? Can you tell him that I'm getting
Yeah.
there?
You just
Getting there, Dale.
kinda taking
Dale.
a detour, long way around.
Dale, I'm getting there. Because of this huge distribution, there's so many ways to hunt them. Out west in the southern Appalachians, they're hunting them with hounds. In the heavily forested regions, like in the east, some places in the east, in the boreal forest where you can't see more than 5 feet, they're hunting them over bait. The Rocky Mountain west and in Alaska, where you can see far, you're spot and stalk hunting them with rifles in big country. Those are essentially the 3 ways: spot and stalk hunting, over bait, and with hounds.
So typically I'd go elk hunting, I'd also get a bear tag. And if I get an elk, then that means I've tagged out on the elk, obviously, but I've still got a few days left. We
Yeah.
go back to the carcass. Would that be considered baiting?
No,
The
not if it's
carcass
a
is just
natural
already
kill.
there. Yeah,
Like, and you legally took
Okay.
all the meat off that you needed to off your elk.
for sure.
And there was a black bear on the carcass that wouldn't be baiting. But
Okay, cool.
point being, bears are thriving. We've got to have a management tool for bears. To make a population stable, you need to take out about 10% of the
For
animals
sure.
per year.
Pretty
And
common
so-
sense.
So like hunting with hounds, hunting with bait, it's a management tool that allows you to be selective. Like when I hunt over bait, I'm highly selective, targeting older age males that have
Yeah.
already contributed to the gene pool, letting the juveniles and the females go.
That's
And-
exactly what we just got to witness on Cam's play-by-play of his bear hunt.
Exactly.
He filmed like 4 big sows, right? Is
Yeah.
what you call female.
Yep.
Maybe not 4, but like there were some juveniles, and then there was at least one huge sow, and he just films himself letting them walk.
Yeah.
And then I think it was the last day, he got a big. I kind of
Big
live
one.
vicariously through Cam, but
Yeah,
regardless,
Yeah. I saw that.
yeah, I get that. But yeah, through hunting and hounds and baiting and all that, you can
so
be
we
selective.
we just started talking about that, leaning into it,
Mhm.
and I do not take full credit for this because Ranella was talking about bears early, but today, a decade later, there's a whole lot of people that understand bear management, understand that we have to do this stuff to be able to manage them, and just have a ton of respect for a black bear. Man, back in the day, there was a Boone biographer, Daniel Boone, a biographer that wrote about Boone that said that in the middle ground of the American frontier, that they killed deer for their hides and bear for their meat. Like bear meat is incredible meat.
Really?
Anybody that tells me different than that, you ain't no cowboy.
I haven't heard that it was good or bad. I don't remember that, but I have heard it's like the creepiest thing to cape out because once you get the hide off, it looks like a human.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. There's a lot of anthropomorphizing bears, which means when humans assign human traits to animals, and the bear is probably the most anthropomorphized animal in history.
Is that like people that are like really heavy in evolution or something? What does that mean?
Well, we anthropomorphize things all the time. It's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily spiritual. But like when you would say that horse doesn't like me, you are assigning a trait to that animal that it probably doesn't really have the capacity to have. Like it doesn't like you or dislike you. It has a certain way that it views the world that's not like us. But people anthropomorphize bears, just kind of assign them human values, like they can think or they can reason or that poor bear knows that you're hunting him.
That's probably the biggest danger and reason people find themselves like. I guess maybe that's what they're doing when they try to like make a wild animal a pet. Anything outside of like a dog or a cat.
Yeah.
Would that be what they're doing?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that necessarily. Anthropomorphizing an animal would be. Here's a great example. There was an animal. There was like a bear getting a name in some neighborhood in California, and them giving it equal rights as a human, essentially.
Yeah. Which is terrible.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
But because bears really do a lot of the same things humans do. Bears can be bipedal. I mean, it can stand up. Mm-hmm. A bear eats all the same things that we do. There's a lot of eerily similar things between bears and humans.
If bears taste so good, do you think humans taste good? Do you know?
They say
y'all
that
are the meat eaters.
I do not know.
You're stuttering a little, Clay.
I don't know. I was thinking about going a couple different directions. Steve Rodella did a deal on History Channel the other day about the Donner Party, which was this group of people that were traveling out west and got stranded over the winter, and there was a bunch of cannibalism and stuff. But
what'd they say?
They weren't on Instagram. They couldn't get a connection on Instagram, so we don't really know. They didn't leave any stories or anything.
People meat is good or bad.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I want to say in some of the research that I've done. There was I'm racking my brain because I'm pretty sure there was some king that said that bear meat tasted like humans, like over in Europe. You know,
Wow.
some medieval freako. But yeah, there's a lot.
Maybe he's a freak. Maybe he's onto something.
There's a deep history with bears that's really cool, man. They're an incredible animal.
You're trying to change the subject back
But
to bears.
just steering a little bit away from cannibalism. When I started working for MeatEater, which we're not really into cannibalism.
Okay, got to specify these days.
For 10 years, I was super focused on bear. And then when I worked for MeatEater, it was like the world opened up to me, and I could create media on whatever I wanted, which I was interested in more than bear, but that was the target of my media for 10 years, you know. And then so now the last 4 years working for MeatEater, which is a, you know, kind of the big player. There's others, but MeatEater, I feel like we're a significant player in the hunting industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest. I don't know. I'm not an avid hunter. I like to hunt. I do love to hunt, but I'm more a rodeo guy. But yeah, I've known about MeatEater for years.
Yeah. So, but when I started working for MeatEater, they wanted me to do a podcast. That was the main thing, because I'd done a podcast with Bear Hunting Magazine. Didn't really even like it. Didn't even necessarily think that was something that I wanted to do. But when they wanted me to come work for them, transition away from Bear Hunting Magazine, come work for them, they're like, "We want you to do a podcast." And I had years ago thought someone ought to do a podcast like Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History podcast, which I think Malcolm Gladwell's a great writer. I don't really know a ton about him, but he had a podcast years ago called Revisionist History, and it was a documentary style podcast, meaning that you interview you have a subject, you interview multiple people, you bring out the best from those interviews, and then you have voiceovers and narration, and you kind of have like someone leading you through to a specific spot to think about this thing.
Dang.
You know, documentary
Very
style.
deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see, you know, we used to have now a lot of the warehouse is like interns, so young males, but there was a time when it was older females, and they were all local, and but the point is they would always listening to like the crime series documentary, and it seems like that's what I could just see, more like probably not females in an apparel warehouse, but like maybe like a guy going on a long drive, and he's going to listen to this series of 5 podcasts to learn about this thing, rather than maybe listening to a book on tape.
Yeah.
I bet that really like captured some people. So is that what gave you the idea?
Yeah. So that's what, I mean, it's not modeled after what, you know, revisionist history necessarily, but when I came into MeatEater, I said, man, I've always thought somebody ought to do a really well-produced documentary style podcast about hunting, because all the hunting podcasts were basically just like a couple people broing out, talking about gear, telling hunting stories, super informal, a lot of information. Everybody loves those kind of podcasts, but I felt like the hunting story was so much deeper.
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't really be explored completely without some real intentionality, you know. And I didn't think that I was that guy. I remember having that thought and literally going, golly, there's no way I'm doing that.
But somebody should.
Yeah. And then in that one of the first meetings at MeatEater, when we were like hashing out like what's Clay's podcast going to be?
You had this great idea, and you couldn't not say it, and they loved it, and they said, "Get after it."
Essentially, and there were others that had a lot of input into it, and so that's what Bear Grease is. The Bear Grease podcast, and the title, the name Bear Grease. I had the discovery for me of what bear grease is like this icon really in my life that's very natural. Like I mean, we render bear fat and use it. I got bear fat coming out my ears.
Yeah.
But bear grease is a metaphor for things forgotten but relevant. There would have been a time in America when if you asked 100 people what bear grease was, 95 of them could have told you what it was, and probably most of them would have had it in their house.
Dang.
Today, probably if you asked 10,000 people what bear grease was, and it was, scattered across the country, not in some rural place, I don't know, 1%. Like people just like completely forgot bear grease. And it's not that bear grease is so important, but it's a metaphor. And I had learned about bear grease, and there was a writer from the 1800s that was hunting in the area that I live in Arkansas, and he had a dog named Bear's Grease. And I just keyed in on that word. I was like, that is cool, bear grease. And anyway, podcast, I said, I've always wanted to have a podcast called Bear Grease, and somebody ought to do a documentary style podcast. And really it was Renella's the one who pushed me into doing a documentary style. Like what his words kind of confirmed what I had thought back here. And soon enough, we started the Bear Grease podcast, which if you listen to our podcast, you might be confused because there's like 4 podcasts on the Bear Grease feed, like different podcasts. And it's great. But the Bear Grease proper podcast is a documentary style episode. We do a lot of history stuff. We do a lot of like.
Is it usually multiple episodes that covers one particular thing, or sometimes
we have
one?
I would say most of them are, probably half of them are series, half of them are one-off episodes.
Okay.
And we did a series on Daniel Boone years ago. I'm just kind of trying to think of how to describe the topics, because it's stories about rural America. Typically, the stories overlap into hunting. We did a big series on Daniel Boone that people really like. We did this series, Genuine Outlaws, about these turkey poachers from my hometown in Arkansas. We did a series on a man named Holt Collier, who is a African American guy from Mississippi who fought for the Confederacy in the Civil War, and then guided Teddy Roosevelt on the bear hunt that Teddy Roosevelt declined to shoot a bear tied to a tree, that then made national news, that then became Teddy's bear. Holt Collier, this former Confederate soldier, former enslaved person, cowboy to the core. He would be in this chair and you'd be saying, "You a cowboy, Holt." Holt roped that bear, tied it to a tree, went and got the president. It's a long story. We did a whole series on Holt Collier. Incredible guy. There ought to be a monument of Holt Collier. And pretty much there was one regional book in Mississippi written by a guy named Minor Ferris Buchanan, a lawyer in Jackson, Mississippi, who had written this little obscure book about Holt Collier. Somehow I got the book. Read the book. Contact Minor Ferris Buchanan. It's like nobody's talked to him about Holt Collier in years. He's like, "Well, sure, Clay, come down and do a podcast." We do this series on Holt Collier, and there ought to be a Hollywood movie about Holt Collier. And those are the kind of stories that we find and we tell. Josh, what's another podcast series? Yeah, we do a lot of archaeology stuff. So there was the Folsom site in New Mexico, Folsom, New Mexico. This, again, it was an African American guy, owned a ranch. Those two stories are kind of similar. Former enslaved guy became a landowner and a rancher in Folsom, New Mexico. Found a pile of bones in an arroyo that had washed out, and he was a naturalist, uneducated, but he saw these bones and he was like, "These aren't cow bones. These aren't bison bones. These are something unique." His whole life, he tried to get somebody to come out and look at the bones in the arroyo. Nobody came. George McJunkin dies, And finally, somebody goes, you know what? We probably should have gone and looked at those bones. They go out to the ranch that George was managing, look at the bones, and it becomes the most significant archaeological discovery basically of the 1900s, where they find these beautifully fluted Folsom points in association with an extinct bison species called Bison antiquus, which Bison antiquus died out about 10,000 years ago. In America, there had been much dispute about whether humans had been here during the Ice Age, and we pretty much didn't think they had. We thought humans had been in America for 3,000 years. But in 1926, we thought humans had been in America for 3,000 years. Dang. Then George McJunkin finds Bison antiquus bones in Folsom, New Mexico, with like 8 or 9 Folsom fluted points, which are the Folsom people. They were the most intricate, best flint knappers in the world.
And there's 89 of them?
89? Did I say 89?
That's what I thought.
Well, the 8 or 9.
Oh.
I mean, he's having trouble when I say numbers.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there was
it's
8
the
or 9.
Arkansas language barrier.
8 or 9. 8 or 9.
Gotcha.
Or 8 or 9. And basically, George McJunkin, this rancher, former enslaved guy, becomes like this super significant player in the story of this continent. We did a whole story.
So now we literally, what year did they find his stuff?
George found it in like 1908. They did the archaeological dig, I think, in 1925.
Oh, so that was maybe part of the reason why nobody was going out there. It's not like people were just jumping in a car and traveling around looking for bones anyway. It's just like, wait, you want me to walk where?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a different time.
Gotcha. So 1926, they discovered that, and that's when it's like, oh, dang, we've been around North America for a little bit longer than 3,000 years.
Yes. So we do quite a bit of, like, I'm really fascinated.
That's super interesting. And to hear somebody like bring all that information to 2024, 2025, like to today, make it relevant. Because I'd much rather listen to 2 or 3 podcasts on that subject than read a whole book, personally.
Yeah. And you learn a lot. Cool. You learn a lot. And man, we really try to keep it entertaining. It's not academic. Usually there's some question that I'm trying to answer, like inside of this big story, you know. What's another good one? Oh, how about this? Here's something that we love. Okay. Historical figures like Daniel Boone and Holt Collier, archaeology, outlaws, Louis Dell and Charlie. One of the coolest interviews I've ever done was with a guy named Donnie Baker. Donnie Baker lives in central Missouri. Donnie Baker is like my age. Donnie Baker listened to Bear Grease, and one day he just writes a DM on one of the platforms to me personally, and he goes, hey man, like your show, yada yada. I understand this outlaw stuff. I got in trouble for killing a 209-inch deer on a military base in Missouri 10 years ago. People send me stuff all the time, just like they do you. And I sometimes see it, sometimes don't. Scan stuff, but something about this guy jumped out at me. And I just said, hey, would you be willing to talk about that with me? And he was like, yeah, sure. I call the guy, and I happen to be going to Missouri. I meet up with him, go to his house, like don't know anything much about the guy at all. And I say, hey, I'd like to come record your story. And I downplayed it big time. I was like, I probably won't use it, but I might. But I'd like to record your story. And I go to this guy's house, put the headsets on his head, and he starts talking. And 2 hours later, we have what was it called? The Donnie Baker story. It was one of the best. It was the most listened to podcast of 2024 for Bear Grease.
Golly.
And basically Donnie, he kills this deer in 2009. He worked on the military base. Big time hunter. Illegally kills this deer with a bow. Gets busted.
How did he get caught?
They just knew that it was just like such a big, if you kill a 200-inch deer, like you're going to be scrutinized, period. about how you killed it.
Yeah, unless you cape it out and Euro mount it and never tell anybody.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen usually.
Right.
And I mean, I could go into all the details of the story, but the main
Did
point
he post
is
it? Did he? How did he?
he did. He posted on Facebook. It went viral. People recognized the deer from the military base. But what's so unique about it was Donnie.
And then finally, he probably just like cracked and confessed.
He lied, and then finally he confesses.
Terrible, just way to like, man, that would suck. Just like living that lie over a deer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But so that's all intriguing. And the man that's done it is the one that's telling us this.
Right.
But then he goes, but let me tell you about the rest of the story. And basically, he lays out how that time in his life was like the darkest time of his life, spiritually, personally. Within like a year, his wife was diagnosed with cancer. And it's hard to describe. I can't even describe it. But it was the most some of the most compelling content you'll ever hear about this guy's life story. And it was, and basically I was like, we all knew this much about Donnie Baker. Poacher, terrible human.
Right.
Ought to be in jail.
Liar. Yeah.
The Donnie Baker that you hear on that podcast, you will absolutely love.
Dang.
Yeah. Do you see
Absolutely.
why that's intriguing?
Yeah, for sure.
And every time I do that, I'm afraid that people are going to say, Clay Newcomb is soft on poachers. I am not soft on poachers.
Yeah.
I'm big on nuance. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
What I'm saying is, people don't know Dale Brisby.
Right.
Until you really, and I don't know you that well. Everybody's story is much bigger than what can be told in a soundbite.
Oh, for sure.
The story is bigger. And I mean, this guy, you just have to listen. I go into detail.
I hear what
it.
you're saying. I definitely, I think that, yeah, I was talking to somebody about a guy that was like doing some not illegal but immoral stuff, and they were talking about, you know, whether that person should be I think it's two things. Number one, forgiven, but number two, allowed to continue to work in a certain workplace. And my analogy was, you know, it's like, yeah, I think they should be forgiven, but like, did it happen today? Yes. Okay, well then maybe I shouldn't do business with that person. Like, for instance, if somebody another person I know that like stole some cows once, you know, like, should they be forgiven? Yes. But when did they steal the cows? That was last week. All right, I'm probably not going to do business with that person right now. But no, they stole the cow 15 years ago and went to prison for a year and a half. And now they're this, oh, okay, well then maybe they're a change, you know. And that friend of mine, I would do business with him. Not only would I forgive him, but I would do business with him.
Yeah.
And I think that it's kind of two conversations. Like, I think people should definitely be forgiven, but whether or not you continue to maybe do business with them. Anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I can definitely see a world where I not only forgive but respect and can do business with a Donnie Baker 10 years later.
100%.
You know, like,
and that's where
I got a friend that poached a deer, and I would trade a horse with him. I would sell horse, you know, like, hey man, I do think this was a POS decision, but anyway.
Well, in the hunting industry, and I'm sure there's stuff like this in rodeo, like if you, I mean, poachers are just, and I'm the biggest one who would say, poachers should be penalized to the fullest extent of the law. I mean, I told you earlier, like I'm not breaking the law on purpose. I don't take that lightly, but how we just label people for life, and how the internet is so crushing to people. Like when you kind of hear Donnie's story, you're just like, I see it. And he takes full responsibility for what he did. And that's why you like him, because he's
Yeah,
just
they were-
humble.
they were-
He's humble. Like it humbled him, and he very few people that did that had that high profile of a busting would have talked to me and kind of done what he did
For sure.
You
They
know,
want
and
to
it-
go in a
it's just
crawl in a
interesting.
cave and never come out of it.
So a lot of the stories we tell are human interest stories.
How do you feel like his life, or has it changed since he did the podcast because it was so big? Probably a little for the better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's for the better, but he messages me all the time. Hey, man, I was in this place, and people were like, "You're Donnie Baker," and
So he's glad he did the podcast.
he is.
Yeah.
And it was every time I find myself in a lot of precarious situations in podcasting, because when I went to Donnie Baker's house, I talked to his dad who was there, and his dad was just this like sweet man,
Mhm.
lost his wife, lived with close to Donnie, maybe lived there. And I was at one point, I found myself standing out in the driveway with Donnie's dad, and Dad knows why I'm here, to talk about Donnie killing a deer 15 years ago, you know.
Mhm.
And I go, Mr. Baker, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think about me
Yeah.
being here? And he just he was just just really gentle guy. And he just goes, Clay, I told him you shouldn't do it.
Oh, really?
He said, and I mean, he wasn't trying, I could tell it hurt him to like
Even
say
say
something
that.
negative to me,
Yeah.
but like, he was like, this sounds like a bad idea to put, to bring this back up. It basically, he said, Donnie's paid for what he did,
Mhm.
and there's no reason to bring it. And he said it in like a short. So when I built that podcast, my number one priority was Donnie Baker.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, it truly was. It stressed me out.
Imagine.
You can ask Josh. Before that podcast came out, I was just like, it was such a compelling story. I knew it was going to be so powerful. But I mean, I truly was like kind of a wreck the day it came out, because I was worried about Donnie.
Yeah,
but I
imagine.
just knew that it was going to be okay. But
It's
'cause
it's so tough to get that I will block somebody. It's so easy for me to block somebody on social media if they talk crap about a guest,
yeah,
because it's number one, it's so hard to get guests, but like, man, these people like borrowed me their time, and I don't know, I'm just so grateful they at least talk to me. And then for them to, I don't know, like, I'm trying to bring the audience value. If they think that I'm an idiot or don't like the way that I might tell a joke here or there, whatever, I'm not even going to address it. But if like
Yeah.
people start attacking my guest, especially if it's just unwarranted, I don't know. To me,
Yeah.
they're going to the block party.
Yep.
But it's crazy you bring that up, because I have isn't there a poacher that I think he did write a book, or maybe you wrote it.
Did I write that?
Something
book?
about down in on the King Ranch.
Yeah, that King. Yeah, Beatty. Yeah,
And I want to have him on.
yeah,
I've just thought about that. That would be cool.
yeah. I've had a lot of people say that I should have him on, but
I'm gonna get him first.
well, to me,
You've already had Donnie Baker.
well, that's
Spread the
what
love.
that's why, and I don't know anything about Beatty, but somebody that's trying to get publicity off of their own poaching, I don't know. I just kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Like Donnie Baker he wasn't asking for me to come to his house. That's because
a good
because
point.
I've had many people. A lot of times, people do this with you too. I'm sure they give you ideas.
Yeah, but just because his intentions may not be pure doesn't mean it's not that interesting of a story.
no doubt,
You
no
know
doubt.
what I
And he
mean?
may be a good guy now. He who I don't know. I don't know much about him.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, like, I personally, I don't know. I can't really wrap my mind around the mindset of what it would take to do something like that, especially repeatedly. I guess
Yeah.
maybe once you do get away with it, there's probably a little bit of a thrill and an adrenaline. And
Yeah.
if you're able to like escape something and kill a big deer, I don't know. It's probably, but that's what's intriguing to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to like edify somebody's story
Yeah.
if they're because I could see where you would think that, like Dale approves of poachers. Like, no.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think they need to definitely,
Yeah.
pay whatever price the law and probably then some.
Yeah.
But it's crazy to me. I'd also like to just interview somebody that spent 10 years in prison, just because, like, to me, it's like, all right, all these movies paint it this way.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear what it's
How'd
really
that go?
like. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah, we've done quite a few of the outlaw deals. I interviewed one of Ohio's first undercover agents. We did a whole series called Secret Agent Man. This guy named R.T. Stewart.
mm-hmm.
Wild stories.
Dang, that
So
song's
that's
gonna be
probably a
stuck
good-
in my head all day now.
What's that?
That song.
Secret Agent Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those would be. That's kind of what Bear Grease is.
Nice.
Anything that I'm interested in, we'll
That's me
dive
too.
into it.
That's me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to pick guests that I am excited about if I'm interested in them. And anyhow, I have a series called Texas Cowpuncher. It's like basically because all my cowpuncher friends
Yeah.
are from Texas. It's not necessarily I'm trying to just like carve
Say they're
out
only from
anybody from
Texas.
Arizona or Arkansas, for instance. I would interview cowpunchers from there. Just being from Texas, I don't know as many from those
Mhm.
places. Regardless, that's they're people I'm interested in. Some of them don't even have social media, so slapping their name on a thumbnail doesn't mean a lot to some people. But I like cowboy stories,
Yeah.
and I like hunting stories.
Oh man,
I don't
have no
get-
idea.
I don't find myself clicking on a lot of mule stories.
Come on, Dale. Hey, I don't know what our time situation is here, but Warner Glenn, does that name ring a bell to you?
No, sir.
No, you don't know who Warner Glenn is.
Okay.
Warner Glenn, he's 90 years old,
No,
lives in Douglas, Arizona.
I think maybe no, I don't.
Okay, man. Well, I
Should I?
guarantee you some of your people would know who Warner Glenn is. He's a rancher in Douglas, Arizona, and he is a dry ground mountain lion hunter.
Has he been on your podcast?
He has. He's 90 years old. He's got a working ranch, and the southern border of his ranch is literally the wall in Mexico.
Dang.
Literally, like his cattle, like it's his fence. You ought to watch the film we did on Warner Glenn. He was the first guy to ever document a jaguar on American soil in modern times. Like document it not by killing it, but a live jaguar. His lion dogs bait a jaguar back in the 90s, and he took a photo of it. But Warner Glenn is just a cowboy of cowboys, incredible guy.
And where's he from?
Douglas, Arizona.
But he's got a ranch in Texas.
No, Douglas. He's in Arizona. Did I say Texas? I
You
don't think
said
I
that
did.
it borders the Texas wall
Did I say Mexican?
or Mexican wall.
Arizona.
Oh, the Arizona. I don't know why. You said Douglas. I keep thinking Douglas, Wyoming. I'm sorry. I was picturing Wyoming. I'm an idiot.
Arizona. Southern
Douglas, Arizona.
Southern Arizona.
Gotcha. I'm sorry.
Mexican border.
I just thought he had two ranches, one in Douglas,
Ah.
Wyoming, and one in
No,
anyhow.
Warner Glenn, he's just an incredible guy. We did a film with him, some podcasts with him years ago, but he's a guy you ought to go to his ranch and do a podcast with him.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But
I've only been to Arizona. I've only driven through there and then spent the 1 week there with Derek whenever we got to go do the deal. But
you
I
need
know
a mule though,
there's-
Dale.
I'm sorry.
You need a mule. The reason I thought of that is Warner's a big mule man. He's also got
I got you.
he's got horses.
Is
but-
that a thing in Arizona? Because Derek has a mule.
I mean, it's the thing in the West where guys are
If there's mountains,
if there's mountains, it's
people probably got mules.
absolutely.
Okay, and then y'all got the Ozarks, and that's why you got mules.
That's right.
I
That's
see.
right. And the Ozarks and kind of the central part of the U.S., Missouri, Arkansas, parts of Oklahoma, Tennessee, that part of the world is a big mule world.
Where was that
A lot of
$90,000 mule from?
well, it was sold out at Chrome in the Canyon in Utah. I actually don't know where it was from.
Utah. That's how Bob Tallman says it.
Yep. That's
It's hard for me not to say it. Also, Fort Worth, Texas. Both of those. Anytime they're thrown around, I gotta. Yeah. So 90,000. That's a lot for a mule.
If you were in the mountains, you'd like a mule.
Yep,
But you're in this flat country,
I am.
and you need performance horses.
Hey, I bet that I imagine there's a place for. What you going to do with the donkey, Alan? Teach it to eat sugar cubes and sit on his horse. That's what I'll do. Sean's me brother, but smart he ain't. Sorry. That's all I can think of every time I see those big ears.
That's all you got for mules.
Is Lonesome Dove quotes.
Man, you got to catch up on the times, brother. This is we did a podcast the other day called Mule Revival.
Yeah.
This is a mule revival in America.
I do need to catch up.
And you're on
the
the
mule culture.
You have the chance to be on the
Yeah.
not on the cusp, because the cusp has passed you.
I'm gonna put that on the list of things I need to be caught up on.
Well, I recognize that here on the ranch and in the rodeo arena, the mule is not it's not the best. It's just not.
Mm-hmm.
But for doing stuff that you should be doing more of, going to the mountains,
yeah,
backcountry hunting, it's what you need to do, Dale. You're gonna need a mule.
When I was a kid, and I used to like envision heaven as like, I don't know, I enjoy going to the mountains, but I would like maybe my mansion was like a cabin in the mountains and had a really cool round pen where I would like, and I just thought of we grew up in a town called Memphis, very similar terrain to where we're at right here, like mesquite trees, a little bit of roll, rocks, rattlesnakes, etc. And but the mountains to me, like, because we'd only go there for like a ski trip occasionally, we'd go to New Mexico, or we'd go fishing in Colorado just a few times. I remember breaking down, but anyway, so that's kind of how I viewed it for a while, was like heaven, I guess. It just was like, the temperatures were cooler, there weren't as many rattlesnakes, and I liked the trees because we didn't have a lot of those, but I could just see that I have the round pen now. That's about the round pen I've always envisioned, but I don't have
if you were in heaven?
The one that I envisioned as a kid, the round pen I envisioned having in heaven when I was a kid.
Wow.
I have that. That's pretty much the same round pen I have now that we were standing by, but I don't have the mountains. So I guess what you're saying is, in my picture of heaven, I need the same cabin, same round pen, maybe some horses, but I'm going to probably have to have
just one mule.
One mule in the back.
And you know where you'd buy it from? Me.
So in heaven, you're dead also, and you're selling mules.
In heaven,
that's
I'm
your
alive.
idea of heaven.
In heaven, I'm alive.
And you're selling mules.
You're gonna feel like this is a detour, but I just read a book called Arctic Dreams by a guy named Barry Lopez, and there was like a missionary that was talking to an Inuit person. What Barry Lopez called an Eskimo.
Okay.
Eskimo today is a word that some people think is like not appropriate, but that's what those people call themselves.
Why would that word not be appropriate?
Let's not go there.
Okay.
But this missionary asked the Eskimo if he wanted to go to heaven. This is not a joke. And the Eskimo said, if heaven, he asked the missionary, he said, is heaven as pretty as muskox country in the summer? That was his like a legitimate question. It's like, is it as pretty as muskox country in the summer? This book is all about the Arctic, but it reminded me of your story, Dale.
Yeah.
If they write a book about you, they'll be like,
yeah,
Dale's heaven. It's got a little round pen and a little cabin.
Yeah.
This guy wondered if heaven was as good as muskox country in the summer. And if it wasn't, he wasn't interested.
Dale's childhood heaven. I don't know. Because I stayed around Texas, obviously, and I don't know. I kind of have a little different picture of it. But if you can have a vacation in heaven, that's where I would want a vacation in heaven. But I don't know that I'll want to. I definitely won't want to spend my time training horses. Okay. I will appreciate having the round pen, but turns out there's plenty of gentle ones in the world. Gus was right. Tell him Woodrow that. Yeah.
You know, some of the first videos that I put on my YouTube channel with Bear Hunting Magazine were mule training videos. The first mule I ever trained, I put on YouTube, and that video kind of went viral and got a couple million views.
Was the response pretty positive?
For the most part, but there was also a ton of negative stuff.
When you get a couple million views, there's going to be some negativity no matter what platform.
Yeah.
If you've got 10 views on Facebook, it's going to have 19 negative comments. Facebook is a cesspool for negativity for some reason. We were talking about that yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can put a video on Instagram, 43 comments of love and adoration. Same video on Facebook, 128 negative comments and maybe 3 positive ones. It's wild. I don't know what it is about Facebook, but that's where the experts come out. And let me tell you something. They know more than you. But anyways,
sure.
I'm not sure what that is. It seems like a recent development also.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's real though. It's real because I think Facebook and Instagram, there's totally different, but my statement was connected to your thing about horse training, connected back to the chronology, the story. Anyway, mule training.
Man, it's been how long have we been talking? Dang. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming down, gathering cows. Sorry I got you kicked. I don't want to reveal too much of the episode that you can find on Bear Grease.
MeatEater.
It's gonna be on MeatEater.
There'll be a video of Dale and I and the team here on the main MeatEater YouTube channel sometime in the future.
You think Steve will watch it?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Good.
Steve watches everything that I do.
What about me?
And he calls me. And
does he know
goes,
who I
Clay,
am?
that was so good.
Will you tell him about me?
Good. I'll tell him about you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I'll tell Steve about you.
Yeah. Hopefully it's all good things. I'm sure it will be.
Thanks, Dale. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Been a fun time.
Yeah.
For real.
Everybody check out Bear Grease. Do we need to plug anything else? Got a website?
No, yeah. Bear Grease podcast. If you go there, you're going to find a lot. You're going to find my buddy Brent Reeves podcast called This Country Life, my buddy Lake Pickles podcast called Backwoods University, and then Bear Grease.
What about First Light?
Well, First Light is the company that is our hunting apparel company. That like my
and
hat
y'all got
here.
camo.
Oh man, First Light has
And you're gonna
top end technical hunting gear.
Okay.
Best in the world. I mean, there's multiple really good high end technical clothing companies. First Light is as good as they come.
So you're gonna hook me up with some stuff to take on my elk hunt?
100%.
Cool.
100%.
Cool.
You it's hard to go back once you start
I don't want
using this kind of gear.
I don't want you to send me an invoice.
Whoa.
I'm gonna give you some Rodeo Time T-shirts, and
Okay.
I just need like a cool up and a cool legs covering.
We'll hook you up with a good kit.
Upper torso, lower torso. That's what I need
We'll hook you up
covered.
with a kit. Yeah.
Cool. All right, everybody, check it out. Rodeo Time. Oh, we wrap up with life advice. You have something for us? I bet you got some good life advice.
Man, just like off the cuff, like, can you give me a genre?
Yeah, I mean, just something maybe that you've circled back to, like whether it's maybe something your dad told you or a scripture even, or just something that kind of a lighthouse for you summed up that you.
Be faithful in the little things, and He'll entrust you with much. That is a scripture in the Bible, but it's like gravity. There are things that are spiritual law that work if that you're even doing it unconsciously, but you got to be faithful in the little things for the big things to happen.
Yeah, I like that. You made mention of it earlier. I like do it, then talk about it.
Okay.
Yep. That
That's
lately,
good.
every now and then I circle back to that one. Just
Yep.
do it, then talk about it.
Yep.
Cool. On to the next one. Pow, pow, everybody.